Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Thank you so much for joining us for this session and discussion on UNESCO's Internet Universality ROAMX indicators, the revised and enhanced indicators, which we launched this Sunday with a high-level panel discussion. We're going to have opening remarks and follow with a discussion from colleagues and experts from different regions who have the experience of implementing the IUI indicators. We don't have a lot of time, so I will proceed immediately to giving the floor to UNESCO's Assistant Director General for Communication and Introduction, who leads UNESCO's work on communication and information, including IUI ROAMX indicators. HG, Mr. Taufik Jelassi, please, the floor is yours to address your opening remarks.
It's working? Yes. Good afternoon to all of you, and thank you for coming to this session, which we are organizing on the revised ROAMX indicators, the Internet Universality indicators, and their contribution to advancing inclusive digital transformation. As Taufik mentioned, we had on Sunday afternoon a panel which launched officially the new indicators. This is for us very important, and I want first, before I proceed, to show you how the report looks like. And if you don't have your own copy, we brought with us a number of copies. So you can take your copy, but if you are traveling, this will add weight to your luggage. Therefore, you can connect to the UNESCO website and you can find the same report in English, but it will be soon available in many languages. So before I proceed, I want to thank some major contributors to this work, starting, of course, with the Brazilian Network Information Center, NIC.br, but also the Regional Center for Studies on the Development of the Information Society, CETIC.br. And we'll hear from a member of CETIC, Fabio Seni, who is here seated to my left. I tried to increase a bit his stress level before the session by saying, you are going to be a main speaker. He said, no, don't call me a main speaker. One of the speakers in the session. And he has first-hand knowledge. He has contributed to this work. I believe this revised version is very important because it does include to the earlier version, which we put into action back in 2019. It does include the new issues that were not incorporated then, such as environmental impact, gender equality, but also emerging technologies like artificial intelligence. So these are important developments that have happened since the initial version was put together. And I'm glad that we believe this is more relevant. Hopefully, this set of indicators, which are both quantitative and qualitative, are more useful, more value-adding to each member state. And let me here clarify something that I was asked about. These indicators lead to national digital assessments by countries around the world. And the initial set of indicators were used by 40 countries around the world. So that's our base. And hopefully now we'll have more countries involved. But this is not about coming up with a comparative study. And it is not about ranking countries along these criteria and these indicators. UNESCO is not in the business of rankings, nor of making comparisons about countries. UNESCO has been around for 80 years, that's 80. We provide guidances. This is a guidance, hopefully to inform policymakers and decision makers at government level, but also in a multi-stakeholder approach to define the gaps they see through this digital assessment, and then to come up with the actions which will remedy to these gaps or will overcome the shortcomings. This is the purpose of these guidelines, and I think as we proceed, you should take them or consider them in this context. I mentioned 40 implementations worldwide, and let me give you some specificities here. We had 17 countries from Africa who have implemented the UNESCO Internet Universality Indicators. It's the leading contingent, Africa. 12 countries in Asia Pacific, 5 countries in Latin America and the Caribbean, 3 countries in Europe, and 3 countries in Arab states. So it's definitely the 5 corners of the world, but we hope, of course, to have more member states embracing this. We had 7 small island developing states, which we call SIDS, 7 SIDS, who have also completed their assessment. And I must say that the feedback we received and the lessons learned from these 40 implementations of the indicators and the related national digital assessments, the learnings have informed us in revising the indicators to know what worked best, what maybe needed to be revised, revisited. And I know the new set of indicators contain much fewer questions to make it easier, simpler, more comprehensive for the parties to carry out these assessments. So again, it's a guidance for national digital assessment, as I said, towards a digital strategy. And I want to mention here a region like the South Pacific, where these indicators have informed key priorities and supported the achievement or advancing on the achievement towards the sustainable development goals. And these are among our objectives: how to reduce inequalities, how to bridge the digital divide, and how to foster economic development in each one of the countries where these were used. Now, when I mentioned digital divide, I mean a statistic that I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, are aware of. We have 93% of high-income populations connected online, while we have only 27% in low-income countries connected online. So you see the gap between 93% in developed economies and only 27% in developing economies. That's the type of digital gap that we talk about. And of course, how we can go forward, not only UNESCO brings a modest brick to the construction of a more equitable digital future, but we need to work together. So we call for more partnerships, more collaboration across different stakeholders, governments, civil society, academic research institutions, the technical community. This is very, very important if you want to achieve trust, inclusion, but also prosperity, since we all know that digital technologies are not only an important lever, but sometimes a unique lever for value creation and value adding. Thank you for being here. And now that I warmed up the audience, I think it's time for the speakers to take it forward.
Thank you very much, IDG, for your welcoming remarks and also highlighting some of the key and important issues that we're facing and the statistics or facts that IUIs have and are trying to address. I know, IDG, that you will need to leave soon to your next meeting. Thank you so much for joining us to welcome people. We'll carry on with the discussion, and I want to mention that we have key people here. Okay, Fabio, you look alone. I'll move towards you so that you're not lonely.
Also with the gender balance.
Yes, I think we have good gender balance. So we have key people here. We have Fabio Sene, who works for the CETIC.NIC.BR. Fabio is an ICT survey project coordinator, and he's a senior specialist who has helped us throughout the IUI, not only for the revision, as ADG was mentioning, but CETIC was the one to pilot the first IUI assessment in Brazil, and they have been instrumental in supporting and giving technical guidance to countries who are implementing the IUIs. We have my colleague Najib Montni, who is bringing the experience of the Arab states where he implemented the IUIs, and also Africa where he still did the IUIs. So I'll allow him to elaborate. And I think the first time in the past few years we have two representatives from the South Pacific, and I'm very proud and happy that we've completed the assessments in 5 South Pacific countries, and we had the first ever sub-regional report on the internet development for the South Pacific, which did not do any ranking, as ADG said, or comparison, but it looked at common trends and learning experiences, and showcased the sub-regional priorities which can help the governments and other stakeholder groups to better advance their digital strategies, digital policies and actions, but also to help guide other international organizations and key donors to perhaps prioritize their support when it comes to the region. So this is the panel of the speaker, and before we go to the speakers, I just wanted to give a few very quick facts as a moderator. I would not normally do it, but just to say why UNESCO is doing what it's doing on ROAMX indicators. The simple answer is because UNESCO has the mandate to ensure the free flow of ideas, and ROAMX focuses, while it has indicators on technical aspects, infrastructure, it mainly focuses on the contents, on human rights online, open educational resources online, openness, accessibility, and multi-stakeholder participation, while also addressing cross-cutting issues such as gender equality online, safety and security, and a few of recent themes were advanced technologies such as AI and the environmental impact of the internet. Okay, it's not working, but these are the core principles. This is UNESCO's position on the internet. As I mentioned, the core principles that the internet should be based on, and these are the principles that were endorsed by UNESCO's General Conference. And while revising the indicators, we, as ADG said, we had the aim to gather the lessons learned and try and make revisions to ensure that it's easier to implement. The indicators are easier to implement, faster to conduct the assessment, and also take into consideration the ongoing processes and digital around the digital transformation. And here it's highlighted. Here are how the assessments look like. These are so far the published assessments, but of course we have many more, which you could, here ADG mentioned the countries, you can see the distribution. I will not talk about all of this for the sake of time, but I hope Fabio will mention a few of these things. But as ADG said, if you are interested, you're more than welcome to contact me. I'm coordinating the IUI work at UNESCO, and of course you're more than welcome to join our dynamic coalition and visit our website for further information and to read some of the reports. Now I would like to give the floor to Fabio. Fabio Setic, as I said, has been key in supporting us throughout this pathway of implementing the IUIs and also revising the IUIs. I would like to invite you to speak about how do the revised indicators tackle the challenges, the emerging challenges, and address the gaps that were identified during the revision process since you conducted all these interviews and surveys and consultations with countries that implemented, but also with the wider public.
Thank you very much, Tatavik. Thank you all for participating. It's a pleasure to be here. For us at CETIC, it was we participate in the process of IY since the very beginning. So we were one of the first countries that conducted the methodology and also pilot this back in 2018-19, and then we were invited as a category 2 UNESCO center to participate in this process of revision. Regarding your question, Tatavik, I think the process was designed by UNESCO and CETIC participated in the process as a highly collaborative and inclusive process. So we try to not only ensure that the multiple sectors participate in the consultations, but also from a regional perspective. So we try to consider regional perspectives in this. So several open consultations were conducted along with a survey, including all those. We tried to speak with all these 40 countries that participated and try to have feedbacks from the research teams on how they implemented the indicators. So I think this approach was critical in developing the new version. And the challenge here is to have indicators that are globally relevant and are still relevant in the new context, but also adaptable, flexible to a wide range of socioeconomic and cultural and political contexts that we have for different countries. So I would like to highlight at least two of this process. First, from a multi-stakeholder perspective, I think we try to engage different governments, civil society, and also the private sector in the process. As that we had a few open consultations on very strategic multi-stakeholder events, such as the NET Mundial that happened in São Paulo in April this year. And also the WICIS forum that happened in Geneva, both of them counted on open consultations on the matter. Sorry, are you listening? And during this forum, we have, for instance, from the private sector, a lot of worry in concerns about emerging technology and also market trends that were considered in indicators. Is it going? While civil society, for instance, highlighted lots of intentions of investigating more the digital inequalities and human rights processes online. So we have to combine all these interplays and viewpoints to the review IOI. So it was considered in the process. From a regional perspective, I think it was also interesting to understand that we had to address specific challenges that we have in each region. For instance, from the global south, and we have lots of comments regarding still how to face the digital divides, the rural divides, the gender divides, and all the gaps in media information literacy in those countries. So I think we came out with more indicators that uses more or less the framework of the meaningful connectivity, or how to have a connectivity that really is useful to change people's lives, especially in the global south. While in countries that the connectivity was higher, we had more discussion on trust, security, and human rights. And we also benefit from the UNESCO discussion on information integrity or the governance of digital platforms to be also incorporated in this process, and this feedback was fundamental. We have lots of lessons from the 40 countries that already implemented the process. So we interviewed all these countries, and it's interesting to say that the indicators was relevant in very different countries, being from G20 big economies such as Germany, Argentina, and Brazil, but also to, as we said, in small islands and all the other countries. The indicators has proven to be very relevant. And in the end, I think we came out with a model that is more user-friendly also. So we received this feedback from the field that we needed to have indicators that are more easy to implement in questions that are more straightforward to be comprehensive in the process. So I do think that these are the main, to say in a few words, the main issues, and then I can comment more on different aspects of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fabio. I hope we will indeed have time to have your impactful comments on the different aspects. But now I would like to move to Najib, you implemented the IUI assessments in Tunisia, in 3 countries in Central Africa, in Cameroon, in Burundi, in the 2 Congos actually. So it's 4 countries in Africa, and I think we've had very successful collaboration there from different stakeholders. But I wanted to invite you to actually speak about while we had effective communication with different stakeholders, what were the main barriers? So what were the success and what were the lessons learned in terms of the main barriers to effective collaboration between all these different stakeholders, government, civil society, and the private sector in Africa? And what are the barriers in this collaboration for Africa's internet policy development? And from your experience, how can this be overcome through multi-stakeholder approach, bearing in mind that we put so much emphasis not only on the not only on the findings of the assessment, but also on the process, which is truly multi-stakeholder and cooperative throughout the assessment process, which then leads to multi-stakeholder cooperation in implementing the recommendations. Please, Najib.
Thank you so much, Tatvik, for the question. Let me first of all congratulate all of us for this second generation of IOIs. I was pleased to support the first generation since the consultations, so since the adoption process of the IOIs and then their implementations in at least 3 or 4 countries. It was difficult also to implement them in other countries. We tried a lot, so that's why there is a lot of challenges, but there is a lot of lessons learned we can share also. So I think that integrating the IUIs into, and the IUIs is the Internet Universality Indicator, sorry, at UNESCO we like use acronyms, into regional and national framework policy making processes can, of course, enhance effectiveness and inclusivity of internet governance and so on. And here we are not discussing the relevance of those IOI, but how we can use this framework and to change the reality, to improve the policies and so on. So I think there is a key word here, the ownership by all the stakeholders. This is very important at the national and the regional levels. So we have to work with all the stakeholders. They need to be aware about this framework and the importance of this framework. It's not a ranking between countries, and this is not very clear for many governments. So we have to work with governments, of course, civil society, academia, regulators, media, private sector, regional organizations and NGOs. And the ownership of these IOIs is very important. The process should be led by those actors, and they need to understand this framework and the objective and the purpose of the assessment, and then they could contribute to its implementation. So this needs a lot of actions. The first one is the awareness raising, capacity building, and the public awareness campaigns. It's very important, and even before conducting the assessments, because there is a need of understand this framework and its implications. So before even conducting assessment, it's very important to organize information sessions, workshops, training workshops, etc. The second key element for this ownership is the stakeholders engagement. And the stakeholders engagement is the engagement of all the stakeholders during the whole process, not at the beginning or during. So it's not easy to maintain this dynamic and create this dynamic among stakeholders and maintain it during 1 year or 2 years to prepare the assessment, conduct it, the data collection and analysis, and develop the recommendations and, of course, implementing the recommendations, and I'll talk about that later. So this is very important, and we need to agree on the role of each actor before, during, and at the implementation phase of the recommendations as well. So it's important to do this mapping at the regional, but especially at the national levels with all concerned stakeholders, and under each domain and area, the right, the openness, access, etc. It's very important because we don't have specialists on all of those fields. So it's very important that we work with all of them and to get during the whole process. The third key element for this ownership and for a successful implementation is, and this is the most important component, the assessments, the data collection, analysis, and recommendations. This is very important, and we need to think about an innovative approach to better involve stakeholders at this phase. And we have also to showcase, transformative impact after the assessment is developed. So of those assessment, and it's important also to monitor the implementation of the recommendation in a participatory and inclusive manner as well. This is very important. This lead for the other element, the monitoring and evaluation. This is very important. It should be based on the performance indicators for each component of the ROAMX indicators to track progress and measure outcomes. And also we need regular reviews because we did some assessment under the previous generation. And in the meantime, there is improvements and developments. So it's important that we do a kind of regular review or updates of the assessment to reflect change and development and improvement. And it's very important for the national counterparts because it's also a kind of recognition about their efforts, that they are following this framework and they are advancing. So, and I think the regional cooperation, it's very important to exchange best practices. When we see, for example, the success stories, etc., it's very important sharing on successful implementation of IUI. It's very we have to think also about some fora, for example, annual IUI forum or regional forums. Also IGF also could be a platform to enhance this regional cooperation and this annual follow-up. Thank you so much.
Very much, Najib. Actually, I have a follow-up question, but very briefly, you mentioned you drew up on your experience in 5 countries, actually. I wanted to ask you, when it comes to the challenges of multi-stakeholder cooperation, do you see patterns of challenges that are relevant to any country, or the challenges in each country are rather unique? What's your take on this?
Yeah, there is some, we can find both. So we have some shared challenges or challenges where we find everywhere. The first one is the political will, of course, because if we don't have this high-level commitment, political commitment on that, we cannot advance on the implementation. And this is, the case of most countries. I tried to implement the IUI there. And there is, for example, another common barrier or challenge is the effective collaboration between partners, and also the lack of trust. So, and the lack of trust between partners, it's leading to reluctance of engagement, of actors. And we have also sometimes a problem of a weak communication between actors. We have, in some countries, we have very limited resources, and also sometimes the impact of civil society or there is the role of civil society. Sometimes it's very limited, and sometimes also we find a kind of a shrinking civic space. So it's also very difficult to identify all the concerned actors and to work with them. So, and this limits the scope of the assessment and also the data collection and everything. Of course, another challenge, it's also common, is the fragmentation of the internet governance framework. So you have, I mean, pieces of and this is very difficult for the data collection. So the lack of comprehensive frameworks and processes for internet governance can also complicate the collaboration effort. So those are the main. It's, I mean, it depends on the context of the country, but we found those challenges. I mean, with difference, of course, but we found them in all countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Najib. Now we'll go to another region, to the South Pacific, actually, where I had the pleasure and honor to visit to conclude the IUI assessments and see the strong willpower and cooperative approach to changing the country and driving the digital transformation forward. And Nanoya Simona, CEO at Telecommunications Corporation. Noya, you've been instrumental in not only in driving the IUI assessment forward, but in driving the digital transformation in Tuvalu forward. And by the way, congratulations on this huge achievement of finally having the undersea cable shipped to Tuvalu. This is a huge achievement, and I know you've had an instrumental input in this. I wanted to invite you to speak about the relevance, first of all, relevance of IUIs for small countries like Tuvalu and islands like Tuvalu. But also I wanted to ask you to reflect on your experience of implementing the IUI assessments and talk a little bit about how governments, from the perspective of telco, how could the governments better engage with all these diverse stakeholders, telecoms, private sector, civil society, and all the other essential actors to collaboratively create a more inclusive digital ecosystem and drive this digital transformation. Thank you.
Yep, thank you so much, Tadevik. Thanks for those kind words. Yeah, Tuvalu just landed its first submarine cable, I think 4 days ago. And it's a milestone and a historic moment for our country. And coming back to your question, I mean, government in small Pacific Island countries, government is very important, and we need to engage government with private sector and other stakeholders, because it is critical for building more, like you said, more inclusive and sustainable digital economy ecosystem in the Pacific. And I would like to take you into how we see the IUI framework strategizing and guiding government in a few points I want to mention. Some of the points was echoed by our other speakers, which is a very important point when it comes to share ownership, because share ownership of digital development goals can really build that trust between stakeholders and get that working together. The other thing that I wanted to highlight here, a strategy that I feel, because we are small Pacific Island countries, we are communal based. Community is very strong in our countries, and engaging local community and civil society is very, very important, and government should collaborate with civil society organizations and to make sure and ensure that digital initiative really address local needs. By saying how to engage, you have to engage community leaders. Government can improve digital literacy from a very the grassroots level, accessibility, and take into account we value our cultures and traditions. So it's very important that we we have that cultural relevance in this approach. The other point that I really want to mention is how to prioritize capacity building and skill development. We are very small in size, and we depend so much on partnership and private sector bringing that training programs and knowledge sharing opportunities to build our local technical expertise because of our remoteness. And we are very far from developed countries, and building capacity is a challenge. And I think on day 0, I talked a little bit on the challenges. In the Pacific, we have very, very unique challenges, and I mentioned a couple of them. And I think we need to prioritize how we can build that capacity and skills development. And the role of the government in that is very important. The other last point I want to mention, I will leave others to my colleague Selu. The other strategy that I feel that government should do is to drive innovation through local businesses. Government can really encourage entrepreneurship in SMEs, small and medium enterprises. I think the way to do that is to do startup-friendly digital ecosystem, because our small Pacific Island countries are, as I said, it's communal based, and we are very friendly. So building that kind of a startup-friendly digital ecosystem can really, the adoption will be very, very fast, I would say. And one of the, an example that I would say, we just developed a mobile money solution just recently, and from experience and from experience from other countries, they said that it will take a long time to adopt a mobile app in such context. But in the case of Tuvalu, because our approach is different, and we like to do it in a more friendly way, because that trust is very much in our communities. So we promote that kind of inclusion and economic participation in that context. Thank you.
Very much, Noya, you mentioned these mobile money solutions. I hope I'll have time to come back to you to also inquire a little bit about this Tuvalu's ambition and project on becoming the first digital nation country, which is related to unfortunate environmental impact, which impacts small islands a lot, and Tuvalu is one of them, which is at risk. But perhaps you could think about that to say a few points. In the meantime, I would like to give the floor to Selu. Selu, I would like to actually build on what Noya said about values. So it was very interesting for me to see that, for example, some small island nations, countries have values listed or defined in their constitution. And so but I just wanted overall to talk about the similarities of the seats, small island developing countries, when it comes to the, can you hear me? Yeah, I can. Sorry. Yeah, it's okay. Sorry, it's weird. So I just wanted you to, we know that there are peculiarities about different digital challenges, and also peculiarities of values, cultures, facets. I wanted to see your perspective on how do you think ROAMX indicators can help strengthen the digital development strategies for seeds, taking into consideration the peculiarities and values, diverse challenges.
Thank you, Tatevik. Malolele, I'm kind of struggling here. It's 2 a.m. in Tonga, so I'll keep it short and sweet. Firstly, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to share today. Just a little, because 2 of us is from the same region, so I'll just share quite a few from the experience of implementing the IUI's assessment in Tonga. I was part of the team on the ground in Tonga conducting this assessment this national assessment for Tonga, and from a civil society organization, we conducted this IUI in Tonga. So a few pointers from there. We identified it as a toolkit for measuring Tonga's digital economy, playing a crucial role in strengthening and identifying where Tonga is digitally. Another indicator that we pinpointed was internet access at its weakest. This was data driven, and so it was something that we highlighted, and it was good to share. As mentioned by Noya, it's community based, so it was something good to share amongst Tonga to know and identify areas that we need to invest more in. The IOIs was specifically awesome because it was data driven, and that was a bit difficult from a CSO conducting the IUIs. But one thing that we learned was, though challenging for us to conduct this, being a civil society, but government support was very crucial. And so amongst all this, there is the multi-stakeholder advisory board, and to make government chair, that will push everything easier for us. From small islands developing state in Tonga, the biggest thing that ROAMX can indicate is to share progress across the region, share best practices, advocate and monitor so that we could align. Most of us in this region are very familiar with risks. Earlier along the year, Tonga had Tonga Hapai volcanic eruption. This morning, there's a big tsunami earthquake in Vanuatu. So I think climate change and all that, these are risks that us in the small island developing states face every day. So cross-cutting and bringing ROAMX indicators into our region, we can easily just share best practices instead of Tonga doing their own and Tuvalu doing their own. Since we are kind of very familiar, very same, we can share and advocate more on this. Two more points. In my experience in implementing this IUI and having digital inclusion initiatives, as mentioned by the speakers earlier, is the multi-stakeholder approach inquires and tailors solutions to our region. So solutions are tailored specifically for us in the region. For example, us in Tonga, we've found some big success in involving community. So when you go down to grass level and involving community directly, you can shape technology policies there, and you can also deliver and conduct more around digital literacy, online safety, and connectivity. Just two challenges besides all this that I wanted to highlight during this program for us is one, the digital divide, and the challenge in aligning policies in our region with the fast-moving technology changes due to the gap around there. And one thing that was not mentioned was we found it quite difficult conducting this assessment and indicators and interviews, the language, trying to indicate to the local communities in the Tongan language from a context that is mostly tech language or mostly international language. We had a little challenge there around interpreting to community level in Tongan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Selu. Selu, as she mentioned, she's from the civil society. She's a consultant on ICT, cybersecurity, and IT management, and she co-led the assessment in Tonga. Actually, I would have wanted to reflect on the implementation of the recommendations, but cautious of time, I think we've got only 6 minutes left, and I wanted to give the floor to each of the speakers to say for 1 minute any remarks, final remarks you have. Please, let's start with Fabio.
No, thank you, Tatevik. No, just to say that I really like what my colleagues mentioned about ownership and collaboration. I think these are two key words that I want to remind when using this. So this is not for ranking or for just classifying countries, but how to create a conversation that is based on sound principles. So that this is why to have it's good to have UNESCO on board, establishing main principles such as human rights, openness, and accessibility, multi-stakeholderism. I think now the process, and I would like to see the next steps in the countries that already implemented, to see, for instance, these new indicators on environmental impacts on digital advanced digital technologies can be very impactful for the new assessments. And finally, I think I really liked also this comment on how to create a network of implementing countries and collaboration between countries. I think this is not planned in the beginning of the process, but naturally it came out as a key tool, and I think we have international fora and other spaces to keep this as a collaborative of different stakeholders and researchers that implemented the indicators. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Fabio. Najib?
Thank you so much. Maybe I will. It's relevant for Africa countries, but also most of developed countries. I think ICT and artificial intelligence, they are among the most promising sectors. I mean, structured transformation in Africa and other developed countries, in terms of employability and in terms of contribution of funding and creating and of course the know-how of young, etc. So it's very important to use the AUI framework, but it's time to think about innovative approach and TOR for all those stakeholders to conduct this, to implement. So, and to discuss there and build the trust through the engagement of all those sectors before conducting the assessment, and after also the assessment is done, to implement the framework, the recommendations, and we need a framework for the implementation with the performance indicators. It's very important to monitor, and so we can also re-evaluate and update those evaluations. It will be easier for us to monitor this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Najib. Noya, please.
Yeah, I will just have a few remarks. It's just that, leveraging the revised frameworks emphasize on resilience, affordability, and inclusion. And small island nation like Tuvalu and other Pacific Island countries can address this in digital divides and enhance environmental preparedness, because we are very, very vulnerable to climate change. I think the multi-stakeholder approach should combine with international cooperation to ensure that the small island developing states navigate the path for digital development journey more sustainably and inclusive in a way. So I think I'm thankful to the UNESCO for bringing that over to our South Pacific Islands. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Noya. These are all points that we could talk about for an extended period of time, but we have only 1 minute left, so Salu.
Thank you. I think just ending for me is the main indicator moving forward for all of us here is empowering people, safeguarding rights, and fostering collaboration. Malo.
Thank you so much to all of you for the discussion and excellent points raised. I hope we can carry forward the conversation and continue the conversation, including through our dynamic coalition. Unfortunately, our time is up, and I have to conclude by showing again our new indicator framework. And I must say that you discussed different challenges, new challenges and technologies, and in the revised indicators, enhanced indicators, we took this into consideration, like Fabio said, and it's not coincidence that is now more inclusive of these challenges, and it's now internet universality, advancing inclusive digital transformation with ROAMX indicators. So thank you so much again, and I should thank once again to all of you, but also special thanks to CETIC, NIC.br and CETIC.br for being with UNESCO throughout all these years, through the inception of the original indicators, and also through the implementation of the indicators, and of course for the revision for the instrumental role. I would like to acknowledge the presence of Alexandre Barbosa here, who is the head of the Regional Studies on the Development of Information Society, so CETIC.br, UNESCO Category 2 Institute, and Fabio, of course, for our years of work, which has been a delight. And with this, I would like to thank the audience for coming, and I'm truly sorry we didn't have time for questions. You can catch us in the corridors now if you have any questions or any remarks to make. But thank you so very much for coming and being with us. Thank you so much.